Hello, you're watching All 24 News World News Program. I'm your host, Karim Zachary, and these are the headlines. Lebanese President Michel Aoun has received the Algerian president's invitation to attend the upcoming Arab Summit. 12 Arab leaders confirmed their participation in the November summit. In the recaptured city of Izium, Kharkiv region, law enforcers started the exhumation of 450 bodies of civilians found in a forest strip earlier. Also coming up, Azerbaijan and Armenia announced that the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict between the two nations resulted in more than 200 deaths this week. Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan on Friday accused each other of violating the ceasefire in the effect at the border and agreed to by the respective presidents after heavy fighting during the day. Hello again and welcome to the program. First in our news, Algerian Minister of Justice Abdelrashid Tebboune, the special envoy to Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, delivered an invitation to Lebanese President Michel Aoun to participate in the Arab Summit, which takes place in November. The invitations by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to the Arab leaders for participating in the Arab Summit reached 12 in total, including invitations to the leaders of Palestine, Egypt, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Oman, Mauritania, Bahrain, Libya, Jordan, and Tunisia. Moving on now to the occupied Palestine, 5 students suffered asphyxiation as a result of inhaling a toxic gas fired by Zionist occupiers as they stormed the vicinity of the Iswaya school east of the occupied city of Quds. Meanwhile, 3 other Palestinians were arrested by Zionist forces inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. 5 soldiers were killed after Israel carried out an airstrike on Syria's Damascus International Airport, as well as other positions south of the capital, causing material damage. Syrian forces intercepted the raid and managed to down most of the missiles, but the strikes are raising fears of escalation, as this was the 3rd time in 3 months that the airport was targeted and disabled. Moving on to a different topic now. Peru and the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic have deepened their bilateral relations, government, parliament, and society after the failed attempt to break relations by the dismissed former Foreign Minister Rodriguez Mackay. Sahrawi Ministry of Foreign Affairs congratulated Peru for upholding to international legality. The parliamentary speakers of the G7 nations were meeting in Berlin on Friday, with Russia's special military operation in Ukraine at the top of the agenda. During the meeting, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi revealed she was planning a trip to Armenia and praised the billions in aid the U.S. has poured into Ukraine. And in the recaptured city of Izium, Kharkiv region, law enforcers started the exhumation of 450 bodies of civilians found in a forest strip earlier. President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday many Ukrainians were buried at various sites in the newly recaptured northeast, including whole families and people who were tortured, linking the aftermath to Russia's withdrawal from near Kiev months ago.
Today the world needs to see what the Russian army has left behind. Another mass grave of murdered people, children and adults, civilian and soldiers, tortured, shot, killed by bombing. Even whole families are buried there, mother, father and daughter.
And to a different matter now. At the annual Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, the Russian President Vladimir Putin told the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi that he was aware of concerns about the conflict in Ukraine and that he hoped to end the conflict in Ukraine as soon as possible.
I know your position on the conflict in Ukraine, and I know your concerns that you always express. We will do everything to end everything as soon as possible.
Vladimir Putin claimed that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization that Russia assisted in achieving the ceasefire following a phone call between the Russian president and the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan.
Indeed, we regret this, and of course, the victims that occurred there, but also, and above all, under the influence of Russia. This conflict was localized. I hope this continues to be the case. Here is the question about resources. We've still got enough of them, thank God.
Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan on Friday accused each other of violating the ceasefire in the affected border and agreed to by their respective presidents after heavy fighting during the day. This escalation, which occurred on the border between the two countries, left dozens of casualties during the night from Friday to Saturday. The Kyrgyz Ministry of Health indicated that the violence had left at least 24 dead on the Kyrgyz side. King Charles III and his siblings held a silent vigil beside the coffin of their mother. King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew, and Prince Edward, attired in military uniforms, stood in silence with their heads bowed for the 15-minute vigil at the historic Westminster Hall. This comes as mourners continued to file past them as they paid respect to Britain's longest reigning monarch, who is lying in state in the Palace of Westminster. Following the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, talks in some Commonwealth nations such as Jamaica and the Bahamas was launched over cutting ties with the Commonwealth and upcoming republics. This raised more questions about the future of the Commonwealth. Nabil Khazini reports.
Between Republican aspirations and demands for post-colonial reforms, the Commonwealth wonders about its future and about who will be able to hold together the 56 states following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, who during all her lifetime as a queen worked for their unity.
I was born in Jamaica, so I have a lot of family members who are significantly older who remember when the Queen came to Jamaica, and these are treasured experiences that they've had. And so the idea of moving forward without the Queen to them is something that they're having a real hard time with, basically.
Critics argue the Commonwealth has lost its sense of purpose and there are questions hanging over its future. Reactions to the death of Queen Elizabeth II brought out the division within the British Commonwealth and the Caribbean, with many members openly declaring their wish to transition to a republic. The Bahamas, for instance, talks for the first time, after around half a century as a member of the Commonwealth, of a referendum for the country to become a republic and remove King Charles as head of state.
The only challenge with us moving to a republic is that I can, as much as I would wish to do it, I can't do it without your consent. I'll have to have a referendum and the Bahamian people have to say to me, yes, it will be needed.
King Charles III has become a king to the United Kingdom. This is, however, not the only title that he inherited, as he is now at the same time Chief of the Commonwealth. The new king's ability to follow his mother's path to maintain the unity of the Commonwealth is now under the microscope in an organization where the monarch's powers are largely symbolic and political decisions are made by an elected parliament and implemented by prime ministers.
Lots of Caribbean leaders of other Caribbean states have talked about becoming republics in the past. Well, this has forced them really to put their money where their mouth is and do something about it. So, I mean, in a way, it slightly takes the heat off Prince Charles, that it doesn't look like, him coming to the throne has suddenly started a rush for the door. The move has started already.
It is possible to leave the Commonwealth in a more hassle-free manner than what was seen in the Brexit process. During these exceptional circumstances, it might be time to witness more countries cutting ties with the Commonwealth.
The United Nations Human Rights Office said on Friday that countries should do more to prevent revenues and arms from reaching the military Myanmar that is ruling by repressing and terrorizing its people. The UN has accused the junta of mass killings and crimes against humanity. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa met with his American counterpart Joe Biden Friday at the White House for discussions about partnerships between the two countries, efforts to tackle climate change and the war in Ukraine. The two leaders spoke privately in the Oval Office for more than an hour on topics that included trade, climate, and energy. They also committed to addressing several of the world's most urgent challenges.
Look, our partnership is essential in addressing many of the world's pressing challenges, from the food security crisis to... And South Africa is a vital voice on the global stage and a leader in international order. We have a lot to talk about. There's a lot happening around the world, not only on the continent of Africa, but around the world that you're engaged in as well. So welcome, looking forward to our conversation, and thanks for taking the time to be here.
And we really welcome the opportunity to be here so that we can extend those relations and we can get more companies to invest in South Africa to create jobs. And of course, we want to discuss what I would call global stability and security, particularly in relation to our region, where we've had insurgents targeting one of our neighboring countries, Mozambique.
Yes.
So that we can discuss that as well, because for us, that's very important.
New fighting erupted this week between Azerbaijan and Armenian forces, the fiercest clashes since the fall of 2020 war between the two Caucasian republics. Sofian Kanturi reports.
Azerbaijan and Armenia announced that Nagorno-Karabakh conflict between the two nations resulted in more than 200 deaths this week. This confrontation is the most violent since the conflict of 2020.
The situation continues to be very concerning. We are deeply concerned about continued attacks along the Armenia-Azerbaijan border. We've seen continued attacks now for a second straight day. We are particularly disturbed by continued reports of civilians being harmed inside Armenia.
At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Samarkand, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev on Friday accused Armenia of large-scale military provocation at the country's shared borders, while Kazakh president claimed that the world had entered a dangerous period of serious aggravation.
But unfortunately, on September 13 of this year, Armenia committed a large-scale military provocation in the region of the state border with Azerbaijan. The armed forces of Azerbaijan resolutely suppressed this provocation.
The modern world has entered a dangerous period of serious aggravation of the international situation, where measures of sanctions pressure, as well as confrontational approaches to solving key global problems, have come to the fore.
Despite a Russian-brokered ceasefire on Wednesday evening, the tension between the two Caucasian republics continue to cause concern. Meanwhile, Iran's president called for dialogue and the peaceful settlements of differences between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
We have always emphasized observing the national sovereignty and territorial integrity and preventing any change in recognized borders. Both sides should resolve their differences peacefully, through dialogue, and in accordance with international law.
The Speaker of the U.S. House Representative Nancy Pelosi said Friday that she will travel to Armenia. Pelosi declined to give further details about trip or who they would meet.
Tomorrow we will be visiting Armenia because we've had an ongoing invitation from the Armenians. We have taken great pride in finally passing and making the law the recognition that what happened in Armenia was a genocide over 100 years ago.
The Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is a territorial and ethnic dispute between Armenia and Azerbaijan of the dispute region of Nagorno-Karabakh, which is primarily populated by ethnic Armenians, and 7 neighboring districts, which were primarily populated by Azerbaijan until they were driven out during the First Nagorno-Karabakh War.
And for important news around the world, let's follow this roundup.
Since mid-June 2022, Pakistan has been drenched by extreme monsoon rains that have led to the country's worst flooding in a decade. Flood-hit regions in Pakistan have become infested with diseases including malaria, dengue fever, and skin problems. Pakistan authorities said it could take up to 6 months for the flood waters to fully recede. But as temperatures in some swamped areas pass 40 degrees Celsius, millions of families are living in the open under scorching sun, many with no access to clean drinking water.
It's extremely hot, and we are swamped in flood water. So we not only swim in this water, we also drink it, because we have no other drinking water. We are not getting any clean water from the government, so we have no other option except to drink this flood water.
So they swim in the stagnant flood water and drink from it.
It is very, very hot, and we do not have any drinking water, but lots of flood water has accumulated here, so we come here to drink this flood water, as well as to bathe in it, to cool ourselves.
According to the latest government figures and UNICEF on Friday, the devastating floods have claimed the lives of more than 1,500 people, including at least 528 children. Women and children, mostly malnourished and in poor health in rural regions, are particularly vulnerable. Several provinces reported tens of thousands of patients visiting makeshift health facilities in flood-ravaged areas. The UNHCR said an estimated 16 million children have been affected, and at least 3.4 million girls and boys remain in need of immediate life-saving support. Pakistan, who's responsible for less than 1% of global carbon emissions, is today at the sharp end of the climate crisis.
And that was actually Mariam Zian reporting about Pakistanis who were forced to bathe and drink from stagnant flood water despite the risks of disease. Now, the roundup.
Sudan's Lieutenant General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo announced that he had agreed during Friday's meeting with the Armed Forces Commander Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to hand over the government and Sovereignty Council to civilians. Dagalo pledged to remove the military from the political scene and to fully discharge its functions under the constitution and the law. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, said on Friday that he had thought it was funny that the European Parliament had adopted a resolution referring to his nation as an electoral autocrat. Orban's remarks come a day after Parliament members proclaimed Hungary to no longer be a fully functional democracy.
The only reason we don't laugh at it is because we are bored of it. It's a boring joke. It's the third or fourth time they have passed a resolution condemning Hungary in the European Parliament. At first, we thought it was significant, but now we see it as a joke.
Following a string of events with people trying to access their funds by breaking into banks armed with weapons, Lebanese banks have stated that they will shortly declare 3-day closure next week due to growing security concerns.
We went in very politely, and we didn't do anything wrong to anyone, and we didn't break anything, and we didn't have any weapons, and we don't carry weapons. The security forces can attest to this, but we want our rights. Some took an A7, and he got his rights. I don't know how to do that.
Torrential rains caused flash floods in Italy on Friday. According to officials, at least 10 people were killed in the central Italian region of Marche, and rescuers continued their search operation to locate others who went missing.
And finally in our news, wildlife experts are making preparations to reintroduce and move cheetahs from Namibia to India. According to local media, 8 cheetahs consisting of 5 females and 3 males were translocated from Namibia to Qunu National Park. The process has been put into effect after the extinction of world's fastest animal from the South Asian country in 1952 due to poaching and habitat loss.
So the animals that we have helped identify are animals that we have been radio collaring for a period of time. And with that, we have to bring them into a quarantine situation. So we've had to bring the animals from the wild in and then hold them. And then with that, they have to go through an entire veterinary check, again, be quarantined for a period of time before they're transported to India.
A reminder of our top stories. Lebanese President Michel Aoun has received the Algerian president's invitation to attend the upcoming Arab summit, and with that, 12 Arab leaders confirmed their participation in the November summit. In the recaptured city of Izium Kharkiv region, law enforcement started the exhumation of 450 bodies of civilians found in the forest strip earlier. Azerbaijan and Armenia announced that the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict between the two nations resulted in more than 200 deaths this week. Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan on Friday accused each other of violating the ceasefire in the effect at the border and agreed to by their respective presidents after heavy fighting during the day. Well, that's it for today's World News. For more news stories, don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you for watching, and take care.